When my husband looked at me and said, "You wouldn't understand how hard it was," I smiled. Not because he was right, but because explaining felt pointless. I thought about the years I stood behind him, the silence I kept, the support I gave without being seen. And in that quiet moment, one question changed everything. What do you do when love slowly forgets you? My husband loved our life, but forgot who held it together. When my husband told people how lucky he was, he always talked about our life. The house, the quiet street, the warm meals, the children who grew up polite and steady. He never talked about me. I noticed it one evening while we sat at the dinner table. The light above us was soft and yellow. The food was still warm. He was telling a friend on the phone how peaceful his life was now, how everything finally felt easy. I sat there, chewing slowly, listening to his voice float above the plates and glasses. He said, "I worked hard, and it all paid off." I smiled. I did not interrupt him, I did not correct him, but something inside me folded in on itself, very quietly. I had learned, over many years, how to smile without showing pain, how to nod without being seen, how to stand in the background of my own life and make it look effortless. That night, after he went to sleep, I stayed awake. I stared at the ceiling. The room was silent except for his breathing, slow, peaceful, the kind of breathing that comes from feeling safe. I wondered when I had stopped feeling that way. I wondered when love had turned into duty, and duty had turned into invisibility. I did not feel angry. I did not feel bitter. I felt tired in a deep place, a place rest does not reach. People think heartbreak is loud, that it comes with shouting or tears, but my heartbreak was quiet. It came in small moments, in forgotten thank yous, in stories told without my name, in a life praised as perfect, while the hands that held it together went unseen. This is not a story about hate. It is not a story about blame. It is a story about love that slowly forgets to look back. And this is the story of how I finally did. I met my husband when I was very young, too young to know myself, too hopeful to imagine a different future. He was kind, he was steady. He had a calm way of speaking that made everything feel safe. We did not fall in love loudly. There were no grand gestures, no dramatic moments. Our love grew slowly like a plant near a window. It was quiet, dependable and simple. I liked that. He worked long hours even then. He talked about building a good life, a stable life. I believed in that dream with my whole heart. I believed that if I supported him, if I stayed patient, if I kept things running smoothly, we would both arrive somewhere warm and secure. When we married, we did not have much. A small apartment, second-hand furniture, plates that did not match. But I made it feel like home. I learned how to stretch meals, how to clean quickly, how to make even tired evenings feel gentle. He used to thank me back then. He would come home exhausted, loosen his tie and say, "I don't know how you do it." I did not know either, I just did. When our first child was born, I stopped working. Not because I had to, but because it felt right. I wanted our home to be steady, warm, predictable. I wanted my children to grow up knowing someone was always there. I became very good at being there. I woke early, I packed lunches, I washed clothes late at night. I learned which child needed quiet and which needed comfort. I remembered birthdays, doctor visits, school events. I kept calendars in my head. My husband worked harder as the years went on. Promotions came. Responsibilities grew. Stress followed him home like a shadow. I made space for it. I learned when not to talk, when to listen, when to simply make dinner and let silence do its work. People would say, "You're so lucky, he provides so well." I would smile and say yes, and it was true. He did provide. The bills were paid, the house grew larger, the car became newer. From the outside, our life looked like something people admired. From the inside, it was balanced on routines I quietly maintained. I did not mind at first. There is pride in keeping things together. There is meaning in being needed. I felt useful, important in a quiet way. But slowly, without any clear moment, the thank yous stopped. They did not disappear all at once. They thinned, like leaves falling one by one unnoticed until the tree looks bare. He stopped asking how my day was, stopped noticing when I was tired, stopped seeing the work because the work was always done. Clean floors became normal. Warm meals became expected. Calm children became proof that everything was fine. And I became part of the background. When people visited, he would say, "Make yourself at home." And I would think, I already did. At family gatherings, he talked about his projects, his stress, his success. I stood nearby, refilling glasses, smiling politely. Someone once asked me, "What do you do?" I paused. I did not know how to answer. I wanted to say, "I hold this family together." But instead I said, "I stay at home." The words felt small. As the children grew older, they needed me less. That is how life is meant to be. I was proud of them, truly. But when they left the house each morning, the silence stayed behind. I filled it with cleaning, with planning, with waiting. My husband came home and rested. He deserved rest, I told myself. He worked hard. But I worked too, just in ways that did not leave the house. Sometimes, late at night, I sat at the kitchen table. The house quiet, the sink empty, everything done, and I felt something heavy settle on my chest. Not sadness, not anger, just the feeling of being unseen. I tried to talk to him once. Just once. I chose my words carefully. "I feel a little invisible lately," I said. He looked surprised, almost confused. "What do you mean?" he asked. "You have everything." And I realized then that he truly did not understand. Because from his view, the life was working, the house was peaceful, the family was fine. The problems he solved were visible. Mine were invisible because I solved them before they appeared. So I stopped trying to explain. I told myself this was marriage, this was sacrifice, this was love. Years passed like that, quietly, smoothly, without drama. Until one small moment changed how I saw everything. It did not come with shouting, it did not come with tears. It came with a sentence spoken gently, without thought, and once I heard it, I could not unhear it. The quiet weight of being forgotten. The sentence came on an ordinary afternoon. Nothing special, nothing loud. We were standing in the kitchen, the window was open and I could hear birds outside. I was chopping vegetables for dinner. The same meal I had made many times before. My husband was talking about his work, a new project, a new pressure. His voice had that tired edge I knew well. Then he sighed and said, almost to himself, "At least when I come home, everything is taken care of." He meant it as comfort, as relief. I nodded, but my hands slowed. Something inside me shifted, like furniture being moved in a dark room. Everything is taken care of. Not you take care of everything, not thank you, just, it happens, like magic, like air. That night, I lay awake again. The ceiling felt farther away than usual. I replayed the sentence in my head, not angrily, just carefully. I tried to understand why it stayed with me. It was because I finally heard my place in his life, not as a person, but as a function. After that, I started noticing more things. Not because they were new, but because I could no longer ignore them. When he came home, he would sit and rest. I would still be moving, cleaning, cooking, folding. He would scroll on his phone while I cleared the table. If I sat down first, he would look surprised. Not upset, just surprised, as if I had stepped out of character. Once he said, "Did you forget something?" I looked around the clean room and said quietly, "No." He nodded, satisfied, and went back to his screen. I began to feel like a ghost in my own house. Always present, rarely noticed. The children were grown now, mostly. They came and went with their own lives. When they visited, they hugged me, thanked me for the food, and then talked mostly to their father. He told stories about work, about how hard he had pushed through the years. I listened from the kitchen doorway. He never lied, but he never told the whole story either. One afternoon, my daughter stayed behind after everyone left. She helped me dry the dishes. We stood side by side in comfortable silence. Then she said gently, "Mom, why don't you ever talk about yourself?" The question caught me off guard. "I talk," I said. She shook her head. "You listen. You help. You don't really talk." I laughed softly, trying to brush it off. But my throat felt tight. That night, I thought about her words. I realized I had trained myself to disappear, slowly, carefully. I thought it made things easier for everyone. But easier does not always mean better. Small moments kept piling up. When friends praised our home, they looked at my husband and said, "You're so lucky." When plans were made, they asked him. When decisions were discussed, they waited for his answer. I was always there, always agreeing, always adjusting. Once, during a family dinner, someone asked him how he managed such a balanced life. He smiled and said, "You just have to focus and work hard." I waited. He did not add anything else. My smile stayed in place, but my heart sank a little lower. I started feeling tired in new ways. Not the kind sleep fixes, The kind that comes from holding things in quietly for too long. I began forgetting small things. Burning toast, missing appointments. My body was asking for attention I had never learned to give it. One morning, I woke up with a dull ache in my chest. Not pain, just pressure. I sat on the edge of the bed and breathed slowly. My husband noticed. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I think I'm just tired," I said. He nodded. "You should rest more." Then he left for work. I did not know how to explain that rest was not the problem. Days blended together. The routine that once felt comforting now felt heavy. Every task whispered the same message: you are needed but not seen. I started to wonder who I was outside of this house. Outside of these roles, the thought scared me because I did not have an answer. One evening I decided to do something small, something different. I did not make dinner, I did not announce it, I did not explain. When my husband came home, he stood in the kitchen and looked around. "What's for dinner?" he asked. "I didn't make anything," I said calmly. He blinked. "Why not?" "I didn't feel like it." The silence stretched. "Oh," he said. Not angry. Just unsure. "Should we order something?" I nodded. He ordered food. We ate quietly. The house felt strange, like a picture slightly off-center. Later that night he said, "You usually tell me." I looked at him and said, very softly, "You usually don't need to ask." He frowned, but said nothing more. That was the first crack. Not loud, not dramatic. Just enough to let light in. After that, I began pulling back in small ways, not to punish, not to prove anything. Just to see what would happen. I stopped fixing things before they broke, stopped reminding him of appointments, stopped smoothing every rough edge, and slowly, confusion entered the house. He forgot things. Missed calls, double-booked plans. Once he snapped, "Why didn't you remind me?" I looked at him and said, "I thought you had it." The words surprised both of us. I could see him struggling to understand. He was not cruel. He was not careless on purpose. He simply had never been asked to see what I carried. And I realized something important. He loved the life we had built, but he did not know what it cost. The distance between us was still quiet, still polite. But it was growing. I could feel a turning point approaching, like weather changing far away. Neither of us said it out loud. But something was coming. The day I finally stood still, the turning point did not come with shouting. It did not come with anger or slammed doors. It came on a quiet day like so many others. It was raining outside, a soft, steady rain that made the world feel slower. I stood by the window in the living room watching drops slide down the glass. The house was clean, too clean. Everything was in its place, like a picture in a magazine. My husband was sitting on the couch, reading something on his phone. The sound of the rain filled the silence between us. I told Mark about the promotion, he said without looking up. He said I really earned it. I nodded. "That's good." He smiled. "Yeah." All those years finally paid off. There it was again, that same sentence, the same idea. Years finally paid off. I felt something tighten inside me, not sharp, just firm. Like a knot pulled too many times. I sat down across from him, slowly, carefully. "I have a question," I said. He looked up, surprised by my tone. "Okay, when you talk about your success," I asked, "do you ever think about how we got here?" He frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean, do you ever think about what I gave up?" The room felt very still. Even the rain seemed quieter. He laughed softly, not unkindly. "Gave up? You stayed home. That was your choice." His words landed gently, but they landed deep. "I know it was my choice," I said. "But it was still a cost." He shifted in his seat. "I never stopped you from doing anything." "That's true," I said. "You didn't stop me, but you also didn't notice when I stopped myself." He stared at me, clearly uncomfortable now. "I don't understand," he said. "We have a good life." "We do," I agreed. "But I don't feel like I exist in it anymore." He shook his head slowly. "That's not fair." I breathed in, breathed out. "I'm not blaming you," I said. "I'm telling you how I feel." He stood up and walked to the kitchen. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. The distance between us felt larger than the room. "You're overthinking," he said. "You have everything you need." That sentence broke something open. Not loudly, not suddenly, just enough. "I don't need more things," I said quietly. "I need to be seen." He looked at me then. Really looked. And for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. "I thought you were happy," he said. "I thought so too," I replied. The silence that followed was heavy. Not angry, just full. That night, we went to bed without touching, not out of spite, out of confusion. I stared at the ceiling again, but this time something was different. I was no longer asking why I felt this way. I knew. The next morning, I woke up and did something I had not done in years. I left the house without a plan. I put on a coat, grabbed my bag, and stepped outside. The air was cool. The rain had stopped, leaving the ground fresh and dark. I walked, past familiar streets, past houses like mine, quiet, orderly, full of lives I could not see. I sat on a bench in a small park and just sat. No lists in my head, no tasks waiting, just me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt how tired I truly was. Not from work, from being invisible. I realized something painful and freeing at the same time. I had allowed this, not because I was weak, but because I believed love meant giving without asking. I believed being needed was the same as being valued. I believed silence was peace. When I came home, my husband was waiting. He looked worried. "Where were you?" he asked. "I needed air," I said. He nodded. "We need to talk." We sat at the table, the same table where I had smiled through so many quiet hurts. "I didn't know," he said. "I really didn't." "I know," I replied, "but not knowing doesn't erase it." He rubbed his face. "What do you want?" The question stayed with me. What did I want? I thought about it carefully. "I want space to be a person again," I said. "Not just the one who keeps things running." He was quiet for a long time. "I don't know how to fix this," he said. I looked at him, calm but firm. "I'm not asking you to fix it," I said. "I'm asking you to see it." That was the moment everything changed. Not because he suddenly understood everything, but because I finally understood myself. The quiet healing after being seen after that day, things did not become perfect. They did not become easy, but they became real. The first week felt strange. It was like waking up from a long dream and realizing the world is not exactly the same as before. I felt exposed, vulnerable, but also strangely relieved. My husband tried to talk more. He asked questions, he listened. At first, I thought he was doing it because he felt guilty, but then I realized he was doing it because he was learning. He was learning to see me. It was not a dramatic change, it was not sudden. It was a slow, careful rebuilding. He started asking about my day, not just to be polite, but because he genuinely wanted to know. When I spoke, he listened. When I was quiet, he waited. That small shift made the house feel different, like a room where light finally reached the corners. One evening I was washing dishes. He stood behind me and held my shoulder gently. "You look tired," he said. I stopped moving. I turned slightly. I'm sorry," he said softly. I felt tears rise, but I did not let them fall. I held them back with the same strength I had used for years, but this time, I did not hide. "I don't need apologies," I said. "I need help." He nodded. "What can I do?" I thought about it. I wanted to say a long list, 100 things, but I chose something simple. "Cook tonight," I said. He blinked, surprised. "Just tonight," I added. "And maybe once a week after that?" He smiled softly, like someone learning how to be gentle for the first time. That night, he cooked. He did not make something fancy, just a simple meal, but it felt like a gift. Not because of the food, but because of the thought behind it. He was trying, and that mattered. Over the next few months, we made small changes. Not huge ones, just enough to remind each other we were still a team. He started sharing chores. He started being more present. He started acknowledging what I did. I began to speak more too. I started saying I need help without fear. I started saying I feel unseen without shame. I started asking for small things that mattered to me. At first it felt strange to speak up, like a voice I had not used in years, but my voice came back. It came back slowly, like a flower blooming after winter, and my husband did not try to stop it. He did not argue. He did not make me feel wrong for feeling. He listened. That was the most important part. One evening I found an old photo album. It was tucked away in the closet. I opened it and saw pictures of us from years ago. Young faces, smiling, bright eyes, hope. In one picture, I was holding our first child. My husband stood beside me, his hand on my shoulder. He looked proud. I looked tired but happy. I stared at that photo for a long time. I remembered how we used to laugh together, how we used to talk, how we used to share dreams. I wondered when we had stopped. And then I realized something. We didn't stop because we stopped loving each other. We stopped because we stopped noticing each other. Love does not disappear, it just becomes quiet. And if you do not pay attention, quiet can turn into distance. That is what happened to us. We had not stopped loving. We had stopped seeing. When I finally spoke, it was not to punish him, it was to bring us back. I had been afraid that speaking up would ruin everything, but it did the opposite. It saved us. It made room for honesty. It made room for tenderness. It made room for me. The lesson I carry forward: it has been a while since that rainy day. Time has passed, and the house feels lighter, not because everything is perfect, but because we are more real. My husband still works hard, he still comes home tired. But now, he comes home aware. He comes home with gratitude. He comes home knowing that the life he loves is not just a life he built, it is a life we built together. And I am not invisible anymore. I still cook, I still clean, I still care for our home. But I also speak, I also rest, I also dream. I have learned that being loved does not mean being taken for granted. I have learned that a good life is not only about comfort, it is also about being seen. There are moments when I still feel the old pain. A small memory of being invisible can return like a shadow. But now, I know how to handle it. I breathe, I speak, I choose myself. My husband has changed too, not because he was forced, because he wanted to. He wanted to understand. He wanted to be better. And he has been. Sometimes I look at him and remember the early years, the quiet love, the steady kindness, the dreams we shared. I realize that love is not always loud. Sometimes love is quiet, sometimes love is patient, sometimes love is a gentle hand on your shoulder when you are tired. But love must also be aware. Love must notice. If love forgets to notice, it can slowly become something else, something that looks like love but does not feel like it. And that is why I'm sharing this story. Not to blame anyone, not to make anyone feel guilty, but to remind someone, somewhere, who might be feeling invisible, that their feelings matter. To remind someone who is comfortable and successful, that their success is not just theirs. And to remind everyone, especially those who love quietly, that you are not alone. If you are holding your family together, and no one sees it, I want you to know something. You are not invisible. You are not unimportant. You are not just a background. You are the heart of the home. And if you ever feel unseen, remember this: you deserve to be seen. You deserve to be heard. And you deserve to be loved in a way that includes your life, your dreams, and your presence. Because a life built with love is not complete unless the love is shared. And a love that is shared is a love that lasts. For more interesting stories, please like, comment, and subscribe my channel and press the bell icon for upcoming stories.